What's up, everybody? Welcome to TPI, the Total Podcast Idiot Show, where we cover everything and anything related to hardwood, the best basketball game in the entire world. I'm idiot number one, Robert. That's idiot number two, Andrew. And as you can see, we have a special guest. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, and we have a special guest. He's the first guest we've had who has been playing less time than we have, and this is Maryland's president, KauffDaddy. Welcome, KauffDaddy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We are setting a record. You will never have a president of as actively awful a team as you have one today. That'll never be passed. Although I won by 40, so it kind of ruins the joke a little bit today.
Oh, he ruined our segment. Did Maryland win today?
Sorry.
No,
I don't like cliffhangers. I just like getting out.
We were hoping for like a solid 2 weeks for you to get a conference W. Because we were just going to be so excited to shout it out on the podcast.
Well, I mean, I didn't think I would. A 40-point win is completely ridiculous, as I said earlier. I mean, I feel bad for the other team. Losing to me by 40 is it's special to lose to me by 40. I'll tell you that right now.
I was more hyped for your 40-point win than I was my own result. Let's put it that way.
Hey, you need a bounce back W.
Yeah, that was a big win for you today. I mean, how are you feeling about it? I mean, yeah, you feel bad. That president they haven't logged in since registering. You don't got to feel bad about that, you know?
Sure. I mean, it's always good to get a win, but honestly, there's bigger fish to fry. This is a long game. When I took over Maryland and I knew they were going to have 5 scholarship players on the roster this season, I knew the long game was the game to play. So win or lose, it's nice to win. I mean, it surprised the heck out of me, but honestly, it's all about the next 2 or 3 years building up to the point that I can be competitive. And I mean, we'll take a win when we can get it, but I'm not terribly worried about it.
Yeah. And, let's talk about like the history of how you found the game and joined. Rob and I have talked a little bit about our history, and we've asked previous presidents, how did you find the game and everything? What's your history with basketball, college basketball?
My history is largely as a sports reporter. I've been working at the local newspaper for 22 years, mostly covering high school stuff, but I've covered the occasional Shepherd game. Actually, I live about 20 minutes from Shepherd, and I grew up a Maryland fan, so that explains the 2 team choices. But yeah, so my background is more on the writing journalism side of things. As far as finding this game, I played ZenGM NBA for a little while, really enjoyed that. And I tried the college game out and it was okay, but the recruiting function on that game is not very good. It's pretty easy to become average, maybe slightly above average. But beyond that, to be consistently good for a long period of time is really difficult to do with the way they've got that set up. So I wanted a free online college basketball game, and I did some Google searching looking for stuff and stumbled across hardwood and kind of gave it a look-see and kind of quickly realized that you didn't have to score all these 5-star recruits to have success in the game. Some of these games that you join, the people who are there from the beginning have such a huge head start that it's almost impossible to end up competing with them even long term. So when I saw that you could actually build a team of a bunch of 3-stars and not really have to get the top recruits in order to put together a solid program, I was like, I'm going to give this a run. So, but then when I went to sign up for a team, whoever was the owner of Maryland at the time had just joined 5 days earlier. So I was a little miffed. I was going to grab Maryland at that point. So I grabbed Shepherd because they were the closest school to me. I live in Williamsport, just across the Potomac River in Maryland, and Shepherdstown, Shepherd College is just across the river, like I said, about 15 minutes away. So I grabbed them first, and I actually grabbed them not knowing that they were in a promotion spot in Division III at the time, that they were leading the conference at the time. They were actually in better shape than I expected. I just picked them because they were local. So then I wound up, playing like the last 10 games of the 2016 season, got promoted to Division II. And I think we overachieved last year. I thought I did a really good job with Shepherd getting them to Division I last year. I was really happy with that season. But then I knew Maryland was going to come open, and it was like, I'm a lifelong Maryland fan. I've been watching that team pretty consistently for 27, 28 years. So I was like, if I had an opportunity to take over Maryland and build it up, and I don't take it, I'm going to kind of wonder what I could have done. So I made the decision to make the jump, knowing full well I was going to sacrifice some competitively successful seasons for a pretty significant rebuild. But that was the choice I made. And hopefully somebody will take over Shepherd and run with them. I'm hoping. I'd hate to see them. I mean, they're in a decent spot. I'd hate to see them go to waste. They did have a new owner sign up with them 2 days ago. So, but he hasn't signed back in since then. So we'll see.
Yeah, I thought I saw that they had a couple presidents since you, but then immediately got removed, and then someone else just signed up. It looks like they're a Georgia Tech fan, is what I would imagine based on their name.
So, but anyway,
okay,
I'd love to see them having some success and keep it going.
Gotcha. So that probably answers couple of my next questions in terms of like why you picked Shepherd at first, and then why you moved to Maryland. So I guess we don't need to hit on those so much. But you did give up a team promoting to D1 for this. I don't even know how to describe Maryland.
The cupboard was pretty empty.
Yeah. So,
but I like the challenge. Yeah, I like the challenge of that. I mean, it's a chance to kind of build it up with my own. Shepherd was 80% built up by the time I took it over, whereas Maryland's going to be, with the exception of Tyson, who I redshirted this year, is going to be a stud guard for me. With that exception, and Meeks is graduating this year, but outside of that, it's going to be pretty much my team and my fingerprints on it. So, as long as I can be patient, and it's going to take 4 to 6 months probably, then we'll see if we can get rolling and have some success. But I don't mind the long game. I'm pretty patient. So, but once I start coming, I'm coming, boys.
I look forward to it. Yeah.
I think that's something that we've both talked about before, is like any other fantasy game that you play, whether it's like fantasy sports, or whatever it may be, it can take years before you can turn around like a dynasty fantasy baseball team or something like that.
Sure.
Versus here, like you take over a complete project like Maryland, like you said, and then every 40 days or so you have, like a turnover on a season, and it's a fresh start.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the really addicting parts of the game, I think, because you have such fast turnover, you have such chance to build like that, and it's not the program like rebuild isn't so daunting.
One of the nice things about it is, as opposed to some other simulations and other sports that I've played, you always pretty much have a daily something or other to kind of dig into. Again, I haven't been digging too much into the individual matchups this year because, I know my team stinks. But, when I was playing with Shepherd, it was really nice to kind of have a team to game plan for every day and kind of look at what the matchups are, what my strengths and weaknesses are, what the opponent's strengths and weaknesses are, and really try to build a game plan that minimized my weaknesses, maximized my strengths, and did the exact opposite with my opponent. The fact that you have one of those kind of challenges every single day keeps it moving even faster than, let's face it, it's going to take probably 8 to 10 months to go through an entire cycle of 5 game years. But the fact that you have a daily challenge right in front of you with games, I think keeps it moving quite fast.
I'd say it's even quite addicting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so talk to us about your current roster. You mentioned Tyson being pretty much the star, the future star, but Meeks is, the current guy. But then, Xavier Mora is really interesting. Eugene Kirk is interesting. Marlowe today had 7 blocks.
Yeah, which is just out of he's been a consistently steady player for me, Marlowe, this year. He's not special, but he's given me 10 and 8 or 10 and 9 regularly, which, this team just doesn't have any guards. If we had some guards, we'd be pretty solid. But that's just, we're going to have to build those guards up. I'm gonna do my best to just keep the big guys stocked. I want to have 2 stud bigs pretty much in my starting lineup at all times. I just think that's a huge part of the game and being successful in the game. And you don't have to have, as you know, guys with 140, 150 SI to be successful bigs. Didier Lemoyne for me at Shepherd last year, he was around that 130 mark, 125, 130, 135 during that season. And he was an absolute stud for me just because he had some height and a massive wingspan and the right attributes. So I'm going to, the goal is going to be to keep stocked with big guys, which I'm okay with right now, and then try to fill in. I'm going to, I've got Tyson at point guard, which is a key spot, so I don't have to worry about that for another couple of years. of actually 3 years because he redshirted this year. So he'll have his redshirt sophomore year next year.
Right.
And then it'll just be trying to fill in shooting guard, small forward, some things like that, and just try to get some live bodies into the program, which is kind of tricky. I don't know if you go to my recruiting page, there's not a ton of guys if there's not a ton of guys in region that are really good looking for me. I mean, there's a couple. I've hit Canamura hard this year after like about 4 weeks ago. I realized that my recruiting for this year wasn't going to be super great. I'm happy that I landed Rossi. That's another big body, so I'm excited about that. And I've got a couple guys I'm working on for next year. But yeah, I'm probably going to be doing the old, in the last 10 days of the season, once we're in tournament time, I'm going to be scouring the recruiting boards and trying to find a couple sleepers that are like 90, 95 SI that I can get for cheap, seeing if I can get a couple more guys into the roster for next year. But we'll see. Again, I'm not going to sign guys that I don't think are worth it. If there's a gem out there that I think is worth it, I'll sign them. Otherwise, we'll keep playing the long game.
So yeah, I think it's definitely possible to find. To find those gems. I mean, it's definitely hard, but look for teams that have already filled their scholarships. And yeah, I mean, I think there's some cases.
I will say I was really disappointed not to get Stringer. I thought that was going to be I thought I was going to get him. And Stevenson's D3, so that was kind of a gut punch to lose him. I thought that was going to be a nice pickup for me, and I really was surprised. But that happens, and we'll keep Dunn. I wasn't necessarily too disappointed that I didn't get. He's not a high IQ guy, so I wouldn't minded having him, given he's already at 109. But I wasn't too disappointed. So yeah, we'll see if we can get a couple bargain bin guys, 1 or 2 bargain bin guys here at the end of the year, and otherwise we'll try to get Canamura and Nicholson locked up and see where it goes from there.
So just to piggyback on that, sort of when it comes to recruiting, right, and you're looking at guards and big men and stuff, what are some of the things that you consider, like you just mentioned with Dunn, he's a low IQ guy for a point guard. Is that an immediate nix from your recruiting list kind of thing? Or what are the things that you're prioritizing? Like
it definitely lowered him. I mean, point guard, you really need to have some IQ to be. I mean, I want my point guard to be a decent distributor, and if you have a low IQ, you're going to be turning the ball over too much. I got Grimes, and he's a smarter player. Go ahead and click on Grimes real quick, and I hope the defense gets a little better. He's going to be a liability there because of the speed, but I do think he's going to be a decent playmaker and should be okay offensively. He's got decent all-around offensive skills. I mean, he's going to get a red shirt. He'll have to develop a little bit. But the fact that he's not going to make a lot of mistakes, I'm a big fan of that at the point guard spot. So, I'm looking for high efficiency guys. And, they don't have to be, as far as guards go, they don't have to be the fastest guys. But ideally, once I fill the roster out, I want to press. I want to get after teams defensively and try to turn them over. I thought that was a key to how much success I had with Shepherd last season. Was I was able to generate about 20 turnovers a game and win that battle by about +8 or +7 on average. So that's, the name of the game for me is, if I can get more possessions than the other team through rebounding, through my big guys, through turnovers, through winning the turnover ratio, to me, that's a big part of the game. And then the offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, I'll play into that. But yeah, I want to win the possession battle. I want to be ideally taking 10 more shots per game than my opponent, because that, to me, I think that's the number one way you win games.
Yeah, I mean, I think he fits. He's exactly how you described him. I would worry about the speed. Yeah, definitely.
He's far from a perfect prospect, but again,
right.
the bin both this year and next year in the Mid-Atlantic region is not great. I was kind of surprised. Now, there were a couple guys that were out of they were already at high when I started looking at them. So, that hurt. I didn't get an early start on some of this year's guys. But yeah, I think when I look at the high school sophomore class right now in the region, that has a little more promise. And I think that class is going to be a pivotal class. If I can land 4 of those guys, I think then you'll start seeing my team really round out.
I mean, obviously, we've mentioned that new players are generated we're in California for our main teams, and it's definitely more fruitful for how often and how many good talented players there are generated. There will be some in the Mid-Atlantic still, but it probably won't be as much still. But there will be some gems. So hopefully, hopefully some.
And you don't need many. I mean, if you get to a position where all you need is, like I said, 3 or 4 recruits a year, preferably 3, but that should be doable even if the region's not the world's best right now. And I know there's a fair amount of competition in the Mid-Atlantic. I kind of laugh when teams like Salisbury, which I'm familiar with, is a little D3 school, and it's a hardwood powerhouse. And Shenandoah, which is 40 minutes from me in Virginia, same idea. It's a little D3, and it's a D1 half powerhouse. So it's kind of funny to me. Again, I think, come ask me how I feel about my team in 2021, and I think we'll be in good shape by then.
The other thing is, like, when you're first starting out, you're already so behind. You're trying to just get this year, and all these other teams, like you said, have already started on future classes. So it's just about, eventually working your way towards those future classes. And, it just takes time, like you said.
Right.
So you'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not worried about being a competitive program. That it's going to happen. I mean, I really think as long as you understand the game mechanics well enough, honestly, even getting to LL3 eventually should be well within the reach for most players. Beyond that, that's a totally different game. When you're trying to get up to LL2, LL1, obviously the splitting hairs and the really digging into the numbers and trying to get the recruits that are just a little bit better, that's a tougher ball game. But getting to LL3, LL4, and being a consistent competitive program, all that takes is some patience. So I'm not too worried about that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so talk about Sean. We talked about Grimes, talk about Rossi, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead and click on him there. Sure. I mean, obviously 6'9" with a 7'3" wingspan. To some extent, I don't even care about the ratings right now. It's like a raw recruit that just, when you see that size and he actually grow another inch, probably not much more than that. But 7'3" wingspan. He reminds me a lot of the Shepherd guy that I'm now blanking on because my memory. Let me tell you, when you get past 40, the memory starts to go. But yeah, he reminds me a lot of that guy, the guy I had on Shepherd. And,
Lemoyne? You mean Lemoyne?
Yes, he reminds me a lot of that as far as his frame. Probably needs to put on a little bit of weight if he's going to. But yeah, the size is certainly there. I think he's got decent offensive ratings already. The inside shot and I'd like the finishing to come up a little bit. Rebounding's great already. Hopefully the interior defense comes up. The strength hopefully comes up. I probably won't need him to ball handle too much. He's a smart guy, so again, probably not going to have too many turnovers, too many egregious mistakes. Again, I'll probably throw a red shirt on him, and by the time 2020 gets here, I think I'll have a guy that can contribute pretty much right away. And that's all you can ask for, really.
Right. Yeah. He looks pretty good, especially for D3 and even into D2. I think when you promote back up, he'll be pretty good, right? Yeah.
Yeah. By then he should be, redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior, probably more redshirt junior. I'd be surprised if I promote before 2021. So I'll probably be 2022 before.
You never know.
You never know, but that's my expectation. That's my goal. So if it happens before that, great. But I'm more worried about, again, getting my roster, getting my 13 scholarships filled out in a way that I can keep maintaining the spots. And so it's all about that right now.
Because Tyson could be like a 170, and honestly in D3 that's enough
he's gonna be
to carry you. Yeah,
he's going to be a stud. We're going to be competitive. I just don't know if we're going to promote. Should we be around 500 pretty quickly in Division III? Maryland was pretty terrible last year. They promoted out of an awful D3 conference.
Right.
I was like, how in the world did these guys promote? And then I started looking at the other teams, and I went, oh, this is why they're horrible. So
they also had
you never know.
Didn't they have like a 180 small forward? Wasn't that like Kirk Bailey?
Yeah, they had a couple other talents. I'm not super familiar with that team.
Yeah.
But I just know I was looking at it, and they didn't have. I think they had 5 scholarship guys last year too.
Yeah.
But they had 3 or 4 solid pieces, and in that conference, that's all they needed. So I was like, and then I'm like, oh great, we're promoted to Division II, and we're gonna get smacked around. Fantastic. But that's, it is what it is. Again, I knew that going in.
Like I said, I try not to beat you too much.
What can you do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. I'm not upset about that at all. It just is what it is. I mean, if I'm facing, one of your guys' teams, it's going to be ugly, just the way it is.
Yeah. And then I'm on Mora right here. I remember because Mora is a guy from New York, actually, I think, or Pennsylvania. So he's in the region of our New York team. So I had my eye on him, but I saw Maryland, and I think this is before you got there.
Yes.
They were on him because he was like a has no preference to play close to home type of player. He's really interesting. So where do you see him long term for your team?
What's his size? 6'4"? Is he gonna? Yeah, he's probably gonna stay 6'4". Yeah, he's probably gonna play shooting guard. He's got a nice outside shot. Hopefully that range can develop. He's got good secondary ball skills already, decent speed. Yeah, he's probably going to plop into the shooting guard spot and probably be starting, if not next year, and probably next year. But that's where I see him playing. Decent perimeter defense, decent wingspan, really good vertical. Wow, I just saw that. He's going to make some dunks. But yeah, my guess is he'll plug into shooting guard and probably be slightly above average, especially at the D3 level, relatively quickly. So
Rob, look at this eval. It's really good.
Yeah, it's really nice. Can be a good or great all around defensive player, something that like with guards you definitely want to target. You said you want to press. You want to force other teams into like high turnover counts.
Definitely. I want the perimeter defense to be solid. I want the speed to be solid. It's not, I know, again, I recruited one guy this year that really doesn't have those attributes, but in general, I want that. The other thing I realized, if you're going to press, if you can go 10 or 11 deep, you don't have to have the world's speediest guys. You can wear down teams just from a fatigue standpoint. Mm-hmm. And the second, if you're playing a team that goes 7 or 8 deep and you can go 10 or 11, that fatigue really starts catching up to the other team. I definitely had some games with Shepherd. Shepherd wasn't necessarily set up perfectly for that style, but they were deep. Again, they had 10 guys when we were fully healthy. And so we could run 2 waves out. I think I played the starters 25 minutes and the bench 15. And we wore teams down. I mean, it was pretty common to see moderate or heavy fatigue with the other team's starters. So I think that makes a difference too.
Yeah. So, you obviously talked about some of your recruiting strategies and stuff like that, some of your game tactics and whatnot. So, in terms of dropping down to D3, sort of, do you ever scout out conferences ahead of time? Are you going to take a peek at them at the start of next season, see what they're looking like, if they're young, that kind of thing?
Probably not next season, just because I'm going to be a team in flux and I'm not sure I'm going to have enough depth to make it matter. I mean, I'm going to be, again, I imagine I'm going to redshirt my two commits so far anyway. So we're going to be pretty shallow again. So I probably won't take that much of an in-depth look. I'll probably fill my time with doing more writing stuff and forum stuff and trying to be somewhat entertaining. But yes, if 2020 season, I'll probably analyze some of that. Kind of look at certainly team matchups again. I'll try to figure out again where I can take advantage of an opponent and ways that I can minimize my own issues. But next year, probably not too much. It's just, again, just going to be playing more of the waiting game.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
And speaking of, the forum posts, you've done literally daily, updates on the highly rated recruits of the 4s and 5 stars mm-hmm. and where they're committing. And I love reading those. A lot of people do. You've also done game summaries of our conference, which has been really helpful for me, certainly probably helpful for Rob. So what motivated you to do all that? You mentioned the PRs before and yeah.
Well, first of all, it's writing practice for me. Any writing practice I can get benefits my job. And a lot of times I don't get out to a whole lot of games these days. I tend to be page layout more so. So any writing practice that I can get to kind of stay sharp on that end, it just benefits me in my career. And I enjoy doing it. It's a way to kind of spend some time productively, a little less productively than my wife wants, but that's all right. We can deal with that. But yeah, it's just basically writing practice. And if at the same time I can produce some content that people are interested in, again, I think the recruiting stuff's been a success, and I'll probably continue doing that. Don't know that I'm going to keep doing like a Division III conference breakdown when I'm there. I'll probably bag that for more team specific PRs, chronicling my own team again. But and then I tried a couple other things. I tried the buzzer beater game winners, going through the Division I and II schools and writing up some of those play-by-play calls, which was fun. But ultimately, it wound up taking a little too long, so they'll probably go bye-bye. But I'm always tinkering with, what things can I do to keep myself entertained, and then hopefully keep other people entertained as well. So I just need to come up with more coaching controversies and recruiting violations and all sorts of goofy stuff.
I will certainly be reading them still, every day that they, I can. And with the team specific ones, you can really build the personalities of the players, like really world built, which I think is really that'll be really fun to read, I think.
One of the fun things I did last year, because Shepherd was pressing 100% of the time in a lot of these games, is there was one game that I was up like 25 at halftime and then kept the press on. I didn't realize I had the press. It doesn't matter. It's a game. But the press stayed on, and I wound up winning by like 60. And I was like, if that happened in real life, there would be fisticuffs going on. I mean, there would be bloody noses, and there would be some knuckles that are raw, and it would have been bad. So I had a couple of games where I wrote about the coaches barking at each other and players getting tense, and just anything that kind of, if I think if in real life it could be an issue, such as running up the score like that, then I can work that into a kind of a funny PR post.
I think that's incredible. I love when people add human elements to the game, and you see people post like, oh, this player joined the 3,000 point club, and some people have posted, like, I know I've posted in the past, like when my seniors move on, like, oh, he majored in poli-sci and wants to do this or that, which is such a dumb thing to add, but at the same time, it's like I actually care about these guys. Like, if I the first player I recruit and he graduates, I'm sad. Like, I'm actually sad he's leaving. So just to add some lore to him and to the team's profile, it's like, let me make a quick PR post about it. So I totally get where you're coming from. I think it's awesome. The buzzer beater idea that you had was something that we had like previously been like, that would be really cool if we can chronicle some buzzer beaters. And we had we searched for them in the conferences and whatnot, but we never had enough time to do it. Yeah. And then so when I first saw you posting about them, I was like, hell yeah, like KauffDaddy's taking on all the stuff that we want to do. This is badass.
I can't do that long term. I just got to a point where it's like, I'm already taking, 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes on the conference stuff right now. And depending on how many recruits get signed, 4 and 5 star recruits get signed, that might be anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. And it starts becoming, I do have a job to do and a family to appease. So even though I'm an extreme introvert and like to be in front of my computer, there are some life responsibilities sometimes.
Do you feel with writing the recruiting things, the game summaries, have you learned how to, the game mechanics, the game tactics? What have you learned from doing all that?
I think looking at the box scores as much as I do just really reinforces how important getting extra possessions is, whether that's, again, winning the glass or winning the turnover battle. It's very few games that I come across where the team that shoots more, has more shot attempts, doesn't win. It's very, very rare. So that obviously looking into all the box scores and writing as much as I do helps me see that. The recruiting's been interesting because it really spotlights how important getting that early start is. I mean, so many of these guys, the teams that got to high even before the start of the year and were really, really getting the jump on it, benefited. There have been a couple of occasions where it's backfired against them, and some team has come out of nowhere and pulled a significant recruit out. But for the most part, if you get on them early, you've got a big advantage. So that's been eye-opening to say, maybe it's worth sacrificing going after one or two seniors if they're marginal, and instead putting some of those points into some of the younger guys and really setting yourself up that way. That's definitely a trend that I've noticed.
Mm-hmm. I think those are important lessons to learn as early as possible. Yeah.
I think it's also why we get so excited when you get an early commit, right? You're on
Sure.
recruiting round 10 and you get one of your targets, or if you're done by recruiting round 17 and you're I have the rest of this season to spend points on underclassmen.
Yeah, it was sweet to get, I had 5 recruits with Shepherd last year, and I think it was done by this point in the season, which was man, this has gone about as good as I could have hoped. I think I was 22nd in the national recruiting rankings last year, which was a surprise even for me to be that successful. And then once I had the class finished, I could cause a little sexual harassment scandal and fire my coach because I didn't have to worry about recruiting anybody else. So then I get the evil chuckles going, yeah, I don't have to worry about recruiting anybody else this year. Let's have some fun.
Good stuff.
You mentioned the sexual harassment allegation that you came up with the coach. We applaud how the administration handled that situation. Definitely.
The administration was embarrassed that they hired such a terrible recruiter to begin with. Really, that was the secret behind the secret. It was just a horrible. The fact that I really, for some reason, thought he was a 15 in recruiting. And then I just checked it one day. I was mid-season. I checked my coaching ratings mostly to see if my assistant coaches had gone up or down. Mm-hmm. And then I saw that he was a 2, and my head coach was a 2 in recruiting. And I just kind of went, and I had 5 guys commit. Wow, I need to change this dude. And then of course, then I got to think, I'm in promotion spot and overachieving, and so again, how am I going to fire this dude and actually have a good explanation for it? So it was kind of creativity by necessity.
Imagine how early they would have how much earlier they would have committed if he wasn't a 2, if it was at least average or something though.
It's got to be really hard to be that bad at recruiting pitches. What are you saying to even be a 2?
You just don't try. You literally
are you pitching your rival? Shepherd, I think maybe you should sign with Towson instead or something. What are you doing?
Yeah, seriously. So I think something that came up on the forums today actually was transfers, and you had a comment. Yeah, you had a very strong comment. So talk about that, because honestly, it has garnered some support, but just the idea, not really the implementation of it.
Yeah, that's the I get that it's a part of real life, but okay, so a guy decides he wants to transfer. You basically, the only way for that to be fair in this game is if you turn it into another recruitment process, which largely doesn't happen, right? The guy says where he wants to transfer to, the team says you can come or you can't come, and it's done. It's not really a recruiting process per se. So how would you even implement that? And never mind. And I think one of the other posters said this in the forum. You come up with these recruiting plans and you rightly redshirt guys when you need to, and you play the guys that you need to play to be most successful that season. Well, if the bottom half of your scholarship roster goes bye-bye because they don't they're basically petulant brats who want to play more, how do you plan for that? There's just no real way to plan for having to deal with that on a consistent basis. So to me, it's just overcomplicating the game. And I prefer realism in my games, but only to a point. There needs to be a good reason to have it in the game. And that's something that would really affect the gameplay and the dynamics. And it just isn't necessary to enjoy the game. So that's kind of where I fall with it.
I think the 2 largest things that pop into my mind right away when it comes to transfers are, number 1, do you have a certain criteria, why players could transfer, right? Do we know that they need minutes or they're not getting enough shots or whatever BS it could be? Maybe you sign 2 shooting guards, find a shooting guard, right?
And you need the program to tell you that. You need the guys to say, you almost have to create a whole new dynamic in the game where the guys are telling you, I'm almost like a morale function where we're happy with what's going on. And you could almost build like personality traits, like is he paid, wants to play right away, or is willing to ride the bench for a couple seasons, or you'd really almost have to build a whole new level into the game, which would be fine, but really complicated. Like if I'm Steve, it's like, oof, that's gonna be tough. And I think the game's great as it is and doesn't need it. So.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I worry about is if you give any sort of user control on where, like, which players transfer or whatnot, just teams that or guys that sign up for multiple teams, like 5-6 teams trying to
the
sign
collusion.
Up. Yeah, the collusion, exactly. If you're, let's say if you're an in-state and then your other program is a big in-state school, right? And you sit a guy and don't give him any minutes and you encourage him to transfer and you assume that he's going to go in-state because just like with recruiting, there's collusion possibilities all over the board with that. And I think that's something that, like, of course, everybody would want to avoid. I think everybody would agree on that.
Yeah, and those things have ruined so many games. I mean, I've played a bunch of simulations. I'm kind of a nerd with my sport choices. I've played pro cycling games. I've played horse racing games. I mean, there's some really niche sports. And the collusion stuff is a big thing. You just don't want to open the door to any of that because it can quickly lead to a huge chunk of players leaving the game, which isn't good for anybody. So,
yeah, I think we've been increasing the user base, if anything, and the less bot teams, the better across all of the divisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So avoiding collusion is completely, I think, the main argument against it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something that you could see the game Hardwood implementing to improve, though? Or you would like to see?
You know what would be kind of interesting? A more hands-on training system, like where you can pick the attributes, or at least a couple attributes. And I know they have a function where you can pick like defense or shooting or foul shooting, but from everything that I've read from players, it doesn't seem to do a whole lot. Like maybe it gives an extra point or two a year here and there with that. But
if that,
yeah. So, and again, this would probably take a lot of coding work. And I don't really want to I know Steve's got broken bat in this game, and I'm sure he's got a lot on his plate, and it's all free, for goodness sake. So, hats off to him. But yeah, if there was anything that I could think of adding to the game that would make it even deeper, it would probably be hands-on training of guys. And I could see that being really kind of a fun thing to dig into, in addition to, again, all the matchup stuff that you get to game plan and the recruiting in and of itself. I think that would be, if I was to make another layer of the game, it would be the training.
Yeah, totally. That like secondary development, it doesn't really seem to have an effect. I don't know. I haven't tracked it like so closely, though. It might, over a longer period of time, but it's hard to see.
Yeah, I think it's negligible, just based on my own paying attention to my own player development reports. I just think it's very negligible. Might give you, again, an extra point or two per year, maybe. But it's kind of splitting hairs. So
with Maryland, though, with the team where it is, have you focused more on development or recruiting?
I've tried to do both. I mean, let me look at my coach real quick so I don't misspeak. Yeah, I've got a coach right now with 17 recruiting and 16 development. So I've tried to, and that's intentional. I want those two areas to be really good. And again, even all three of my assistants are in double digits in both those categories. I mean, I know that for the next 2-3 seasons, those are going to be the key areas. I'm not really trying hard to get promotion. I'm not trying hard to win any conference titles or national tournament titles or anything like that. I want to recruit guys and develop guys so that, 3 years from now, it pays dividends. Now, Stevens is getting a little older. He's 63 right now. So there will come a point semi soon that I'll probably have to find another guy, hopefully with those same skills. Hopefully I can get another 2, 3, 4 years out of Stevens first, but yeah, that's exactly the reason why I hired him, and just because of those two values.
Yeah. I mean, timing that with, because we talked about getting ahead in recruiting classes, but then obviously when you fire your coach, you take this penalty. So timing that's going to be really interesting, and you're going to have a whole new ball game with that. Trust me.
Yes. My gut feeling is that this, again, the current high school sophomores class in the region is pretty solid. I think I've got a chance to nab 3 or 4 of those guys. And I think I may go hard at that. and make that my cutoff point to then hiring a new coach, where I'll just try to, that'll kind of be my targeted replace the head coach period, because I think that's going to be a decent cutoff. I think by then I'll have close to a full roster of scholarship players. I should certainly have at least 11 or 12 at that point. And I should be in a decent position to go ahead and make the head coaching switch and then start up again. That's kind of my plan right now. Obviously, as you guys know, all plans are subject to change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are any of your assistants kind of, who you would consider an heir potentially to that head coach position?
Not likely. I mean, all of my assistants are, I could see Derek Stearns, my young guy, who's already gotten pretty nice stats. I mean, he's 11, 11, 12, and then 10s everywhere else. I could see him eventually getting to that point, but you're probably still talking another 8 to 10 seasons, really. The other guys are a little older already and probably not quite good enough. They're average. I mean, they're not going to kill you, but they're not. I'm always going to want somebody with a decent recruiting number.
It sounds like you don't know this.
Just why?
Coaches coach to their true level. Like, even though it shows 12 for Stearns, he might develop at what his true level is, which might be a 16. It just won't show 16 yet, but it'll still develop.
Well, I'd rather have the sure thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'd rather know.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't like variables that I don't know. I like to know what X is.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So a few episodes ago, we played a game, and I just think it's really relevant to the conversation we're having, right? And so we asked each other, would you rather questions. And so one of the questions that I had to ask Andrew was, would you rather have a coach that has a 20 rating in recruiting, but the max development level he can get to is like level 4, rating 4, or a coach who is a 20 in development, but the max recruiting he can get to is 4?
I think it depends on what level my team is at. Like if I've got an LL1 high prestige team, I probably don't need the world's best recruiting number at that point, right? My prestige and my level is probably going to somewhat neutralize that, and I should still be able to get some decent recruits, at which point the development is more important. If, on the other hand, you've got a rebuilding Maryland team that has 5 scholarship players and you're about to go to Division III, it's going to be harder to pick up significant guys. I mean, certainly the 4 and 5 stars. I mean, I'll probably be picking up mostly 3-star guys, although I am recruiting some 4 stars right now. But in that situation at Division III, I would think the recruiting number is more important and more necessary for landing guys that will really impact the program and do good things for you.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's definitely the way to go.
I don't know. I'm still kind of like, even with a situation like Maryland, I feel like I could find gems and then develop them up to be serviceable, even potentially good or stars, So I would still, just my mindset, I think I would still gravitate towards the developmental coach.
Well, the nice thing about this question is it's not necessarily an either or question. You can get both. I mean, it takes some scouring sometimes and some consistent looking, because obviously guys show up and then they show up on the coaching list and then they get picked, and then new guys show up and then new guys get picked. And but if you keep a pretty decent watch on the list every couple days, there's usually somebody that's in decent shape in both of those categories, where you really don't have to pick one. You can get both. So
it's still a fun question.
It is. I love what ifs too. But.
Well, with Steven's your head coach now. You got the development and the recruiting, but you're sacrificing the more tactical in-game performance things, which is okay right now.
We stink.
You know what I did?
They can have a 20 offense and 20 defense, and we'd still lose.
But you know what I did one year because I was looking to replace the coach. I literally went through every team, but particularly looking at the bot teams who I thought were not going to be who were having bad seasons. And so I thought they were going to fire their coach. And so I just looked at their head coach and thought, is this a guy that I might want? Because bot teams will just fire their coach, like, no matter what, not no matter what, but like if they have a bad record, they will fire them no matter the ratings,
Well, let's be honest. They think a robot could do better.
Yeah. So I had this like a list though of potential coaches that I would want to target, and so I ended up getting one. So I don't know, but some people are crazy like that. I guess maybe just me though.
Well,
It
the proof
worked
will be
out.
in the pudding. We may know in a few years, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was what, a New Rochelle that I did that with me, or that's the coach I have, and yeah, they're doing all right. So, I mean, if that's something that you have time for, and I'm not just talking to you,
Yeah.
KauffDaddy, I'm whoever's watching, that's a tactic to do though, I think, and it helps because I knew immediately I could just control F the name and find them and then hire them
Mhm.
quicker.
Yeah, you're also a madman that literally went through
Again,
all the bots that could be firing their head coach. Again, this is where the 7.5 hours a day comes in. That sets the difference
yeah.
between you and everybody else.
I mean, it kind of.
In fairness, I don't think you need 7.5 hours to put your team in the best possible position to succeed. I don't think
Absolutely
it
not.
takes a ton of time to get a good coaching staff. It just takes a little bit of work and searching and making it happen. And I think that's, if you put the effort in and do a fair share of homework, you're going to put your team in the best possible position. You're not
Yeah.
always going to win by 40 when your team RPI is 105, but you're going to put your team in good positions. And so, to me, it's just about making sure that you've done everything that you can, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Right. So I mean, you've already played your redshirters, Tyson and Mora. They're 5
Mhm.
games.
Mhm.
Did you play them in all in non-con, or did you spread them out? What was the
I
idea
played
there?
them in the first 5 games, the non-conference games, and I honestly didn't put a lick of thought into it because I heard that discussion about, do you save them for big conference games? Which, let's be honest, I don't have any big conference games this year, so I think it's really kind of a non-issue in my situation this season.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, in the future, if you have a guy that you think could make an impact for those 5 games before you redshirt them, would I save them for the most important conference games where I think they can make an impact? Absolutely. It's just not something I even thought about this year because I didn't think I needed to.
Well, it saves me a lot of stress and planning though, because when we are going to face in the conference tournament, I don't have to worry about Tyson, coming out of nowhere.
I probably wouldn't do that anyway.
Honestly,
Just because I just don't feel like putting the effort in with a team as lousy as this one.
Sure, yeah. I mean, a team did that to me once. They were more
Yeah.
successful than Maryland, but they.
What you
brought
trying
out
to say?
No, it just caught me by surprise, and it was it just was something that I didn't think about beforehand, and because I just assumed, and then I mean, I don't know if that's the reason I lost, but I think it definitely helped them.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I would do it. I care more about regular season conference standings and promotions and things like that because there's less variance to it. A
Mhm.
30 game sample really shows what your team is far more than a conference tournament and a national tournament, which has, as you guys know, any one game, anything can happen.
Yeah,
I mean, the worst team can win by 40. I keep bringing this up for some reason.
And you should be proud of it. You should be flaunting that.
But yeah, I care more about the consistency in the conference standings and promotions and things like that. And that's always going to be my primary goal. And then again, what happens in the conference and national tournaments, should I qualify, we'll see. But my emphasis is going to be on the other stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Let's see. Rob, do you have any other questions?
I think you've been really informative throughout the whole podcast. Like early on, you answered some of our questions like right, left, and I was like, man, this guy's on it. Like,
yeah.
No, I think that's pretty much it on my end. Do you have anything you want to shout out to anyone out there or ask us? Or
I don't necessarily have. I know I mentioned the recruiting, the highs and lows sometimes, and good luck with that. I do want to say this because I've been following conference 4-1, I think, is where Shepherd landed, and Marist is really freaking good. Like, I knew they were good last year, and seeing that they're like ranked 3rd in Division I RPI, man, full credit to that president because they're doing some work. I'm really impressed with them. Yeah, and they thumped me 3 times last year, and I tried. I mean, I threw everything but the kitchen sink at them. I tried pressing them and the tempo up and limiting possessions and got beat by 30. And then I tried a combination of the two and got waxed by 30. So it didn't matter what I did. Those guys were good. And so I would say, just because I was in the same conference with that guy last year, good work, man. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, they are 33-1 on the season. So
Wow.
they are dominating.
Yeah, they're really, really, I think they're better. Frankly, I looked at the top 3 teams in the top 25 rankings, and I think Marist is better than all 3 of them. That's just my own personal opinion. And it's just based on looking at the team statistics real quick. You know, that doesn't mean it's going to play out that way come, March Madness or whatever. But yeah, I think Marist is rock solid. I would not want to play them in the tournament.
You heard it here first. Marist to the Final Four.
That, from what I hear, you're going to pick Marist to win it all in your tournament bracket. That's what I hear.
I got to find time to fill out a full tournament bracket. That is some time commitment right there. I mean, you really got to do some digging for that. And you don't have much time to do it either. So, I mean, I know you guys did a tournament preview podcast last year. I commend you because that is a lot of work to take on in a hurry.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't do much research. We just like
You picked it like my wife would pick it. What's the uniform colors? What's the mascot? Who's got the coolest mascot?
Pretty much.
I mean, go ahead.
We had some knowledge just throughout doing the show for a couple months before that. So we had some idea, but it's like it's still a crapshoot. Totally.
I picked Slappy Pappy and to go all the way to the Final Four, and I never would have guessed that as 11th seed, and they did.
Yeah.
Luck.
One of the things that I like to do, and I haven't written any of these lately, but I love to do underrated, overrated with rankings. Just looking through teams and stats and seeing, are they really as good as the ranking says they are, or do they have some question marks? And honestly, I think the rankings set up with the game can be a little bit flawed at times. I think some of the teams outside of the top 25 poll can often be just as good as the teams in it. I don't think it kind of reminds me of the all conference and all American stuff. The all American selections are flawed. And again, I'm not trying to get on Steve's case and try to rework it or whatever. He's got a lot of other things to do. But in my research, the All-American teams are a little bit questionable, whereas the All-Conference teams tend to be pretty solid. So just one of those things. And it's really hard when you've got, 240 some odd Division I teams and just that many Division II teams. And of course, you got twice the number of Division III teams having really accurate, rankings and polls. And, there's only so much that the TPI and the RPI and the strength of schedule can really tell you. Although I do think, of all the numbers that you get on those lists, the strength of schedule, if you combine that with just the overall win-loss record and the margins, I think that strength of schedule number matters a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know the All-Americans, at least Steve's acknowledged, and everyone has noticed that it's only Legends players. And so I think he said he has fixed it for this upcoming tournament. So we'll hopefully see some like legit selections. I
don't know if that's true the last couple seasons. It is definitely not true for previous seasons. There were guys that competed in the other league levels that have earned All-American status, at least that I recall from my research. I mean, because I looked at all the two-time Division I All-Americans, the two-time All-Americans, and not all of them were Legends players.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't think that might be a bug now, but I don't think it's always been a bug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully it's fixed. Yeah, I'm not sure.
He's got bigger fish to fry too. It's not the end of the world. It's just for a stat nerd like me who loves looking at this stuff.
Yeah, it's it's just for a colored star on a player page that not many people will really notice.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter much. Now, it has been fun. I'm trying to find what I think is the best starting 5 in hardwood history, as far as just not necessarily all one team, although that would be great fun to do it, one for each team. It would take 8 years, but but I love looking at like who are the guys that I think are like the best starting 5 that you could put together out of all hardwood players. And I'm through like about halfway through the conference 2-2 history.
Wow.
And there's a 6'10" shooting guard with like a 7'2" wingspan and incredible shooting stats. And it's like, yeah, that's like Kevin Durant out there on the shooting guard. So I've had fun doing that too. This is the kind of stuff that I just enjoy. So I waste tons of hours looking at stuff like that.
Well,
Hey, we each have our hobbies, definitely.
I think we all appreciate it. We're all better off by reading it. So appreciate the work that you put in for sure.
Definitely.
Thank
you.
Yeah. I think with that, we'll wrap it up. We're right about an hour on the total of the podcast. So
yeah, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm always happy to help out, and hopefully we can entertain some people.
For sure.
Sounds good. This is TPI signing off. See you guys next time.